morning. This is Corwin with Watson's Locksmithing Service. I had an early morning this morning. I was up at around 6:30. Early bird gets the worm. So I had an appointment at 8 a.m. out in St. Charles. So it takes about 40 minutes to get there from my house. So I got up, got dressed, I started driving. When I arrived there, now I've done a few jobs now in St. Charles area. I tend to get a lot of calls from there. Not a problem. So I get there, and when I get out of my vehicle, I immediately see who I believe was the homeowner in his driveway. I approach him, I smile prior to, and I extend my hand out to shake his hand and introduce myself. I proceeded to say, I believe I'm here to do a rekey, correct? And prior to me doing that, I could tell he was kind of uncomfortable as I was approaching me. Now I'm in full uniform, right? I have the company logo here, Watson's Locksmithing. There's two people shaking hands. One is a gray, one is a lighter hand. Safety, security, and professional service. And I have Locksmith written across my left breast. I have bonded on my shoulder, along with residential door, overhead door operator, which is for resident commercial over here, and then I have the residential over here, along with certified there, and it has a big writing that says Locksmith on the back. So let's just say for a minute he didn't realize who I was and assumed I was the police. Because I've gotten that just recently. Someone said, "Oh man, I thought you were the police. You just had this commanding presence, even from the back." Okay, ma'am. so okay, that's cool, right? I was in law enforcement, for those who know me. And so I approached him, I introduced myself, and again, I felt he was a little uncomfortable. So I tried to mitigate that, and you know, ask him how was his day, a little small talk, and he stopped. He said, "Well, no, you're not here to rekey anything." I said, "Oh, I apologize. So you're changing, I need you to change out a deadbolt and a handle." "Oh, not a problem. I apologize for the miscommunication. I'll be happy to service whatever needs you have related to it. So I'll swap those out, no problem." So as I'm walking toward the house, because this typically when I arrive on scene, see, that's the police talking right there, not a scene. When I arrived at the house, we started walking, and I said, so let me just check out everything that needs to happen. And he's like, "Aren't you gonna get some tools?" So it's common for me, one, I need to see what I'm doing first before I go and I grab tools, because I may assume that that's all I need and that's all that I'm going to do is install this, and then when I get there and I realize that you have something different about your deadbolt or your lever sets, and there's no wafer that I need to depress, but it's okay. I won't get on into the jargon. However, I see the job first, then I get my tools, because now I know, I have a better idea of what I need. So again, I can tell he was a little uncomfortable. It was like he was already in question as to, you know, was I really a locksmith? Was I really capable of doing the job? Now, some of this is probably me. So I always try to check my ego, you know, at the door. And it's hard. I'm working on it, but you just try to put it aside, you know, and service your clients. So I get my tools, I go back in the house. His wife is standing in the foyer. I introduced myself, and she didn't say a word. A word. She didn't say anything. She looked at her husband, and then she turned around. Now, I only seen that on two occasions. The first one was when I was responding to a domestic dispute, and when I arrived, he basically said, "You say anything, and you're gonna get it afterwards." Okay, so I seen it there. Wasn't appropriate then, but I saw it there. I also saw it when I was in Afghanistan, serving with the U.S. Army, and again as a security contractor overseas. And with Afghani women, when you speak to them, you may cause them to be stoned. Don't speak to them. Okay? Now some groups are different, so that didn't apply across the board, but you know, I encountered that. So when I encountered this here in America, where you speak to a person and then they just totally disregard you. But that's okay, because I'm not here for her. I'm here to service her locks. So, and be paid for it and go on about my business. So as long as I spoke to her, because I entered her home, okay, let's leave it there. So I put it aside, and then I went on ahead and I started doing what I was doing. They hovered over my back the whole time in the foyer while I put the locks on. And again, I already sensed that they were uncomfortable. And so I was trying to mitigate that as much as I could by having some small talk with them, explain to them what I was doing, why I did it, thinking that that would help. And maybe it did a little bit. Because by this time, the husband says, well, I explained to him after looking at his electronic lock that he wanted me to put on as a deadbolt. I explained to him it requires an additional prep, which means that I have to bore out, drill more holes into the door in order to make this lock work on the door. So it would take a little bit more time. He said, oh, okay, I understand. Let me talk to my wife. So he go and he speak to his wife, and he comes back and he says, okay. So I proceed with doing what I was doing, and I saw him leave. And I guess she was okay. She stayed in the back for a while. She finally came out. Now this didn't take me long. To install this, both the lever and this, took me less than 35 minutes. But so when she came out of the room, I was about finished, and I asked her for some alcohol pads or something of the sort in order, if she had any. So she came back and she gave me some alcohol so I can clean the lock off. I normally don't use that, but that's what I use. So anyway, so I just wanted to clean the lock off. Then as I was doing it, as I was wiping her door down with cotton balls and alcohol pads, I said, this woman is probably thinking I'm wiping my fingerprints away. So I probably just made her more uncomfortable than I did when I first walked in. So I'm like, man, I probably can't. Okay, let me stop cleaning the door off. So then I had to touch the door again to let her know, no, I'm not doing this to wipe my fingerprints away. Okay, you know, I do not have a criminal record by the grace of God, and so therefore, you know, let me stop this and not make her feel more uncomfortable. Because at one point I looked over my shoulder and I saw her kind of peeking around, like, oh my God, he's wiping the doors down. And so, you know, so she stayed on the phone the entire time, which is typically another sign that they are usually uncomfortable and they want to, you know, which is weird, because then her husband left her alone, but I guess he really had to go. So I, you know, and I asked him, did he want me to leave and come back a different time when he was there to finish up? But you know, he didn't want that, so he wanted it done and me to go. So I finished the job, and she had a key sticking in the door. And so I asked her if she wanted me to make some keys, and by this time, the lock also needed to be programmed. So I asked her first if she wanted me to make her additional keys. She said no. No, we'll take care of it. Okay, not a problem. Do you need help programming the lock? No, we'll take care of that as well. Not a problem. So she came in, she handed me the check. I confirmed the email address that the receipt needed to go to, and then I left. And it was like a huge burden lifted, right? Because I usually don't feel uncomfortable, right? I've been in Afghanistan twice. I was down in Logar province after I left Bagram. I was down in Logar province, Afghanistan, which is right on the border of Pakistan. We were taking rocket attacks, 9 attacks a day. Small arms fire from the mountains all the time. Car bombs coming up, blowing up our ECPs. One of my jobs was investigating blast sites. Okay, so we'd go out after there was an explosion. We'd go out, we'd investigate, so on and so forth. And not even those things made me as uncomfortable as being in a house. Isn't that weird? Right? Because not because, you know, I sensed any danger or anything. This wasn't like a get out moment. This was just, they were so uncomfortable that it made me uncomfortable, because I didn't quite understand why you would be so uncomfortable with me. I've identified myself. You went through the company. You got us through home advisors. We have good ratings, right? I don't go and do horrible, poor quality jobs. So if you're basing it solely, so the only thing that you could be basing